What's going on, guys? It's Astros here. Welcome back to the 2020-2021 roster breakdown. Today we're going to be going over Golden Guardians and what moves I think they should be looking forward to in 2021. In order to do that, we got to go over the roles. In the top lane, you have Haunter. In the jungle, you have Closer. In the mid lane, you have Damonte. At AD carry, you have FBI. And at support, you have Huhi. GGS has two expiring contracts going into 2021. Haunter's contract expires and so does Huhi's. I think both of these players are worth re-signing. I think Haunter is just a good top 3, top 4 top laner, and I think Huhi really ramped up this season. I think he's worth giving another year at least on support. Haunter is the GGS top laner, and he's pretty solid overall. He has a super large champion selection at his disposal. Overall, he's a pretty good laner as well. He's ahead in CS at 15 in 2/3 of his games. He's plus 235 gold at 15. He does die a good chunk to first blood at 22%, but he is an NA resident. He has a large champion pool. You can kind of leave him on the island. He doesn't need a ton of attention, and he'll still come out of lane with leads. The only major concern I have are his random deaths later in the game and the lack of Ornn success. Closer was GGS's jungler, and he was easily a top 3 jungler in NA. You could argue for top 2, you could argue for top 1, and honestly, you couldn't get much pushback. He was super instrumental in the GGS early game. He had a 39% first blood participation in summer, 45 in playoffs. He was good on carries. He was getting better on the tanky side of things like Volibear and Set. He had the second highest XP diff at 10. He has plus 700 XP diff at 15. He is a Turkey resident, so he is worth an import slot, but he is absolutely worth it. This man is going to turn out to be a beast in 2021. Damonte is a really interesting player. Overall, he's not super great in terms of laning stats. He's actually negative in almost every stat pre-15. He's not this super power player mid laner, but what he does bring to the team is something that is really interesting. If you look at GGS and you look at Clutch, he's a team player. He's giving up resources mid and increasing the chances to win through the other players on his team. This is a positive and a negative. He has really good roaming stats. He's really influential in the team's early game. But if it comes to a super hard carry mid, he isn't going to outperform players like Jensen, Bjergsen, etc. FBI was GGS's AD carry, and this guy was an absolute beast, not only in lane but out of lane as well. He was averaging ahead of CS at 15 in 90% of his games in summer. He had the highest DPM out of all AD carries. He had 71% KP, which was 4th upon marksman. He's carrying 30% of his team's damage, which is nuts as an AD carry player. It means you're consistently dealing damage throughout the whole game. He is an OCE import, but he's 100% worth the import slot, just like Closer. This guy is young. He's probably the best AD carry in the league overall. Definitely the best AD carry in summer and best AD carry in playoffs. Huhi is the Golden Guardians support, and I have a question mark here because I don't really know where this guy's going to peak. He had an absolutely amazing end of summer and playoffs. Him and FBI were the strongest bot lane in LCS, especially in playoffs. He's formed a decent champion pool with picks like Bard, Thresh, Set, even as Morgana and Lux. But we have no real way of telling from an outside perspective how well it's going to carry into 2022 and 2021. I think he is worth re-signing the contract anyway, but that's the only reason he's not a green check mark is I don't really know how well it's going to carry over into next split. One thing all teams should be looking at is Jensen's contract does expire at the end of this year, so he's going to be a hot commodity going into 2021. Breaking down these two players, it's really hard to tell which one is going to be a better fit for Golden Guardians until you make the actual move. Jensen is very dominant. He's a super dominant player, always top 1, top 2 mid laner in NA. He's got a more focused champion pool around the meta. There's not as many niche random pocket picks or whatever. But he also has a super large clutch factor and is a massive fan attraction for GGS. While Damonte is I said before, he's super hard to rate as a player individually because his strengths aren't insane. But what he seems to do to lower tier teams and just uplifting their harder carries is also something that you can't ignore and something that you need to factor in when thinking about building a roster around what they already have. Now there is a few other possibilities. Technically, since your top lane role is up and Impact's contract expires as well, you could replace Haunter with Impact. I think this would have some benefits. I think it does have some drawbacks too. I think Impact should probably be looking to retire within the next year or so, so if you do sign him, you probably only sign him for a year. He is a good top laner. He is solid, but I think I'd rather have Hanser personally. Now, the other option you have is picking up Jensen in the mid lane over Damonte. It does create a different dynamic for your team and play style because Jensen is a little bit more resource focused. But if I'm GGS, I'm probably going to try and re-sign Hanser for another year, re-sign Huhi for a year, and just see what improvements you can make throughout the offseason and going into 2021, because I don't think this roster peaked at the end of 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you have any thoughts on what you think GGS should do with their roster, leave it down in the comments below, or you can message me on Twitter. My socials are in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.